Hey everybody, welcome back to creating scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator using free resources. As always, I am going to start a series of videos. I don't know if they'll be back to back, but I'll create some bad scenarios and I will run a build on the project and show you the different kind of errors that you're going to get. Either externally, building your project externally using the FS package tool, or using the console inside the sim in dev mode. Just so you know, all right, I'm going to build all of these outside of the sim. And the reason I'm doing that is that when you run the build process, the FS package tool exe, when you run that outside of the sim, it doesn't load in all the graphics requirements of the sim in order to build a project. You don't need all of those resources when you build a project. Now, yes, I do build my scenery inside the sim, but only after I'm doing some graphic edits of my scenery inside the sim. Okay, I get my models built, I get my animations created, I get my textures and all that, my materials added and all this kind of stuff. I get all that stuff done first, and then I build outside of the sim. Then if I need to go in and change some apron textures and things like that, maybe work with taxiways and runways and stuff like that, then that's when I build inside the sim. All right. I would probably say, probably 75% of the time I'm building outside of the sim, because that other 25% inside the sim is when I'm actually working with that scenery inside the sim. I hope that made sense. Okay, now the 75%, I just need you guys to remember that that 85.5% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Okay, so I don't know if it's actually 75%, but let's pretend. Just to say, I probably do the majority of all of my scenery creation outside of the sim, and then I go into the sim and do that stuff that's relevant of the graphics part of the simulator, and then I build inside. All right, I hope you understand what I just said. I'm not sure if I just did. Okay, now I'm going to show you to start off with these videos on errors. I'm going to show you some simple errors that are made, and I'm going to show you what the console is going to report back to you for those errors. So when you see those red errors in your builds, you'll be able to recognize, oh, that's because I probably have something misspelled or something like that. But the one thing that you also need to know is that whether you're building outside of the sim or inside of the sim, the console errors that you get are the same. It's just that inside the sim, the console is a little bit more graphic friendly. Okay, it puts little tabs and stuff beside the errors, but when you build outside, it does not. I'm going to show you an example here really quick. I'm inside the sim. I'm going to open up my guinea pig project, which is 5 Alpha 1 airport that I use. I'm going to go to project. We're going to open project. And I'm going to select the XML for that airport. I'm going to open that up. Hopefully it does, and it does just fine. All right. Now I'm going to add this to the scenery. I'm going to add the BGL, load it into the scenery editor. Okay. Now there's nothing fancy in this project. Okay. I just want to show you the difference of inside the sim builds and external. All right. So this project has an object called test block. So I'm going to go over here to objects. I'm going to select my 5 Alpha 1 here in Ohio, and notice that there's a test block in there. So if I click that, do an one click, you're going to see this block in the sim. And it's going to look okay right now. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but it's just an example. Now, the last successful build I had, there was nothing wrong. All right. But I've made a change to this block, and I have not built the project yet. Okay. So the success of this block being in there is because of a previous build that I did that I was doing it correctly. Now, I've edited this object in Blender with an error. I know it's going to cause an error. All right. So in the sim, if you go to Windows, open up the console, this is the console that shows up. Okay, now these 30 errors that are in the console is because the simulator has errors in it all the time. Things not drawing, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. All right, now I want to clear this console, so I'm just going to hit the eraser and clear this console out, and I'm going to close it. And I'm simply going to choose, I know there's an error in this project, so I'm going to simply select this, the project, and I am going to go to the inspector, and I'm just going to do a simple build. Hopefully it airs out the way I think it's gonna. So here's the console. Bring that to the front, and notice I have 3 errors. 3 errors because of this build. And if you notice down here, I have 1 failed. All right. And I expected that because I did it on purpose. Now I'm going to zoom up. I'm not going to zoom up. I'm going to look right here. See these 3 X's? This is the error. All right. This is how the errors look inside the sim. Okay. Right here tells you what the problem is. All right. There's a problem with a texture. All right. And here's the output. But these 3 lines are the errors. See, it has a fancy circle with an X in it. That's what your console looks like inside the sim. All right. When you have errors, warnings, or if you get a successful build, it'll say 0 failed at the bottom. Now I'm going to show you the exact same error outside the sim. So I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to get out of the sim, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm outside of the sim, back in the directory, and now remember, it erred inside the sim. You saw that in the console, the fancy graphics, you know, had a circle with an X, and it was red, and it set up in the upper left-hand corner, there's 3 errors. All right. When you build outside of the sim, the only difference is it doesn't make a call for all those graphic user interfaces and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't draw the sim and all that. It does take a little longer to build outside of the sim because it has to make external calls, but the results are exactly the same as the console, okay? It just looks different, all right? Now, when I build, I just take my project XML and I left mouse click, and I'm holding it, and I drop it on the package tool that I copy inside all of my projects. All right. Now it's going to start the process off screen because it just defaults to the main screen to begin with. But after the build, I'm going to slide it over so you see what it looks like. Okay. So I'm just going to drop the XML, left mouse click and drag and drop on top of the FS package tool and let it run. Now it's running on my screen over here, but if I move it, the graphics won't catch up. So I'm going to let it finish. It doesn't take that long, really, because this is a small project. So it's okay, it's done. So I'm going to drag it over here so you can see what the console looks like outside of the sim. It's just a text window, okay? But the reporting is the exact same thing as you get inside the sim, all right? If we look at these side by side, the text looks exactly the same, except the errors just show up red in terms of the line, and it's the exact same error. Okay, I know what this error is, and I'm going to explain it to you here in a bit so you can recognize errors when you do your correction. I believe that this topic has not been addressed enough for the community. All right, so that's what I'm going to try to do with a series. And like I said, the series is not going to be back to back. It's just that I'm going to set up errors and I'm going to report back. Today we're going to talk about 4 basic errors. So when you build outside the sim, just remember that the console is not a fancy graphic type of thing. It's just text, but errors show up red. All right, so let me hit any key to continue and that will close out. Now let's cause some errors. All right, let's just, since I already have it done, I mean set up for this error, let's do this error first. All right, so what I've done for error number 1 is I have gone into Blender and I've caused a problem. Let me set that up. This first error that I created, I'm going to open recent, open my test block, and notice that, and don't worry about the PBR and all that fancy stuff. It's just something simple. All right, this is just a box that I've draped with a brick texture, straight grout lines, all that kind of stuff. All right, but this particular error is based on the texture that I used. All right, it's just a brick texture. Let's go over to the materials, and this particular block, I am using a texture that I called ERR texture, meaning error texture. All right, and I've added that to this particular block. Now, I know that this is an error for a specific reason. Now, you may not know it's an error when you build your project, but you need to look at your console to find out what it is. All right, this particular error is I made a copy of this brick texture and I scaled it incorrectly. So I'm going to open up my Krita. I am going to I'm going to open file, and I'm going to go into my project here. And I'm going to go to 5 alpha 1, go into my package sources, go into my model lib, and go into textures. I have 2 textures. I have one that I called error, and I have one that's correct. Now I'm just going to hover over it and show you what the error is. So if I hover over that texture, notice the size. The dimension is 4067 by 4096. This texture is not divisible by 4. Okay, notice that the first number is 4067. That's not divisible by 4. In order for Microsoft Flight Simulator to use this texture correctly, the number of the dimension has to be divisible by 4. Now, one of them is, okay, I mean, one of the dimensions is 4096, but that first dimension is not. So that causes an error. So what's the error look like for a bad texture? So let's cancel out of this, close down Krita, and let's look at that error. I have that saved, so let me bring it up. So I did a screenshot of that console, and this is the error you get for a texture that is not correct. That is not in the correct dimensions. If you notice, it says failed to convert texture. Okay, it's texture related. You may not know what the texture problem is off the bat, but nine times out of 10, it's the actual size of the texture that's the problem. Okay, so I got failure to convert texture. I got one fail down here, and it gives me the name of the texture that's causing the problem. So I need to investigate it. And I would go in, bring it into my image editing, Krita, and I would look. The first thing I look is the size. Is the size divisible by 4? Okay. If it isn't, I make sure that I'm using one that is. And then I rerun, and it builds just fine. Okay. So since I already had this error set up, that's why we're talking about this one first. So a problem with a texture, it's going to say failed convert texture and give you the name of the texture. Then you need to find out why it's wrong. What's wrong with it? So let's fix that problem. All right. Let's go back into Blender. And I'm going to go into UV editing. You don't actually have to do it in the UV editing because I already have my thing unwrapped. Let's come down here to the textures. And I have a texture that's correct. I call it right texture. I'm going to open that, and I'm going to go into the textures folder, and I'm going to choose the texture that has a size divisible by 4. Click on that, open that, it wraps it, okay? It looks the same. It's the exact same thing, except the size is slightly different. So I select everything, and I'm going to re-export my model. And I'm not doing levels of detail for this one. This is just my guinea pig. And I have all my setups. I'm going to make sure that it creates a GLTF and a bin. And make sure that my path is correct to where my texture is, which is /texture/. And I'm going to do make sure that selected objects, custom properties. If I have lights, I'd do that. Okay, but I don't. All right, and all of this stuff is correct. Apply modifiers if you have it, and then export. Then that's going to go out and create the new GLTF. All right. Now we are going to go back into our project folder, and since my let's go into package sources, model lib, test block, and here's the new GLTF, and yep, that's the time, just a few seconds, a couple minutes, a minute or so ago. This is the texture, the object, so it created the GLTF correctly. Okay, now that's the bin. Okay, there's the bin. Bin has the same. The GLTF has the same, and the I'm not worried about the XML, okay? I'm not worried about the XML because I told it not to write an XML, all right? Because you don't really need it. That has no, it just makes a pointer to the GLTF file. That's all that does. Okay, so this didn't need to be rewritten. So anyway, we got a successful export. Now I'm going to close out Blender and go back to where I was. I don't know why I left. All right, let's go to 5 Alpha 1. And now I'm going to select the airport XML. I'm going to drop it on FS Package Tools. And it's building on the screen over here that you can't see. And it's 100% positive, actually 99.999% positive that it's going to work correctly, because I know what the problem was. Yes, it did build correctly. Slide that over here, and notice we no longer have any errors. We fixed the texture problem. 0 fails. Okay? So, that's what a mismatched texture size looks like in an error. Now let's do a couple other basic errors for this video, and then we'll close it out. One thing you have to remember when you're building your scenery folder structure, that certain files need to be correct in terms of their name. The overall package XML, this is the format. I have the 5 alpha 1 dash here for Huron County -ohio.xml. All right, let's go into this XML and make a change. Let's open this in Notepad++, and what I'm going to do is notice that this line, it's making a call to the same file name but in a different folder, package definitions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to misspell this on purpose. I'm going to drop the O. I'm going to do a save, and I'm going to minimize this, and I am going to simply just drag and drop that project onto the package tool again and rebuild the package. It's going to take a few seconds. Let me pause. Okay, it's done. Drag it over here, show you what the error looks like. All right, so I simply misspelled the name of the XML in the package definition directory. Okay, I'm in the actual XML. Let me bring that up real quick. All right, where is there it is, right there. All I did was inside the XML, making the call to the package definitions XML, I misspelled that name. All right, let's take a look at that. Let's go over here and go into package definitions, and notice that here's the XML that it's trying to call, but in the XML that's making the call, there's no O, but this one has an O, so it can't find it. So what's the error look like? It simply tells you fail to open and then the name of the XML, and notice that the O is gone. All right, so this is what an error looks like if it's something with a misspelled XML package name. All right, so what we're going to do is we'll simply do that, close that out, open up the text editor, and correct, make sure our spellings are correct, save it, and run it again. Go back in here, take this XML, drop it on the package tools. Takes a few seconds. I'll pause while that's taking place. It finished the build, and it's successful. Okay, so a successful has no red on it, and at the bottom it should say 0 failed. Don't worry about the skipped or the done. That's relative to whatever new stuff that you've put into it. All right, but you want 0 failed. So we have 0 failed, so it's good. The next error that we're going to create is we are going to go into the package definitions. There's the correct name of the XML. All right. Now, in the package definitions folder, this XML and this folder inside of this folder needs to be the same, with the exception of the .xml. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to misspell the name of the directory. So this folder and this XML do not have the same name. Then I'm going to go back into the root and I'm going to drag and drop FS package tool to build it. All right, as soon as it's done building, I'll bring it back over. So here is the results of the failure of the package definitions folder inside there. The airport folder and the XML inside that same folder do not match. The error looks like this. You get a copy lister source directory error. All right, and it gives you the path name of where it's trying to find that package definition folder, and it can't find it because we dropped the O off of Ohio. Okay, but this is what that kind of an error looks like. A copy lister source directory does not exist. Okay, because those two files aren't named the same. Okay, so I'm gonna hit the space to stop that, and we're gonna open this back. We're gonna open our folder back up, and we're gonna change this back to Ohio. We're gonna put the O at the end, so these two are named the same. And hit enter. All right, and then go back up here. Take our project XML, drop it on to our FS package tool, and build it again. I'll be right back. We've made our correction. We have the same finish 24 skip, 0 done, 0 failed. Okay, so we fixed that problem. Let's create a new one. Let's create that new error. Let's go into, what do we want to do? Let's go into package definitions. Whoops, package definitions. Go into this XML that's in package definitions. Open that up in our Notepad++, and this XML has all the different asset groups and asset directory stuff in it. All right, so let's make a mistake inside of this. Let's go to the asset group model lib, where I have 5alpha1-model lib, which is a good naming convention. You don't just want model lib. Give it a unique name other than model lib, so it doesn't interfere with other people's scenery. So I have a directory, a folder called 5alpha1-model lib in the package sources. Let me rename this to 5bravo1. All right, so it's incorrect, and let's do a save. Then we're going to build this project and show you the error that shows up for this. So I'm going to go to 5alpha1, and I'm going to drop that on my fspackagetools.exe. Let it build. Be right back. And this is the error that you get for an asset directory that is named incorrectly than what it is in your folder structure. Okay, so I just basically made a misspelling. You get a model lib lister source directory error, and it gives you the path to what it's looking for, and it's looking for 5bravo1-model lib. Okay, but it doesn't find it because it's expecting 5alpha1. Okay, so this is the kind of error that you would get if an asset group or an asset directory error inside the XML looks like. Okay, so let's fix that. So let's go back into our, oh, actually I already have it up in my Notepad++, and let's change this back to 5alpha1, and save it, minimize that, and rebuild it. Drop that on there. And again, it's happening off screen. Be right back. And there we have it. Okay, now it says finish 23. Remember the last one was 24. And the asset group, since this is changed to 23.1 because when you change the asset group, it re-adds it as a new feature or a new asset, basically. Okay, that's why it went ahead and cleaned that up with the 1. Now, if I built this again, it would say 24 skipped. All right, because it did not do this part, but 0 failed. All right, so that's what an asset directory error looks like in either your console inside the game or externally. All right, this error took me a while to recreate this error. I kept doing everything right. All right, so this error, this does show up when you first create a project, and I'm going to explain how this happens. All right, so this error is an asset groups error, and it failed because of timestamps. I don't know if I can explain that very easy, but pretty much when you see a timestamp error, okay, in this case it is dealing with materials, and it cannot, the output path for creating the asset groups for materials, it could not create the library XML for this particular airport. Now, what is going wrong with my material library? All right, so timestamp material library. All right, that's the error. Now, here's where the error is. Usually you get this when you first create a package. When you go into your package definitions and you add an asset group to the XML. So let's open this up with Notepad++. So I have an asset group for material library, for material lib, and it's 5alpha1-materials, just like I had before. Okay, so this is the output for my material library, input and output, the source material and the output. Okay, now in this folder, that materials folder is supposed to look like this. In the package sources, we have our 5alpha1 materials. Inside that, we have a textures folder. And then inside that, we put whatever textures that we're using for our materials. In this case, or in most cases, it would be like runway, you know, the red sign with the white letters that lays on the taxiway at a hold short for a runway. Okay, like 28-10 or whatever the combination of runways and the paint job that's on the ground, right? Okay, now here I just have an air conditioner roof texture, but it's related, but this I would use in a building rather than a material library. But we can pretend that this is a runway marking. That's why it took so long to recreate this error. All right, so how to fix this timestamp error? All right, you need to go into the sim, because it's inside the sim that the problem exists. So I'm going to go into the sim and show you how to correct this timestamp error. Okay, I'm inside the sim. I got a noisy bus in the scenery. But anyway, we're inside the sim. I have 5alpha1 project open, and I'm going to come over here to the material library or material editor, and I'm just going to select our 5 alpha 1 materials, and then select to make sure that it's open. Now let's go into 5 alpha 1, and what we're doing is we're correcting that timestamp error. Basically, we've created a material library asset group, and we've put a material or an image into the textures folder of that asset group and built. And it erred out because it doesn't know what to do with that texture that's in that folder. So what we need to do is, in the material editor, select your material library and simply go to File, New, give it a name, and we'll call this Roof just because we can. And then we are going to click this black area, and we're going to go into Package Sources, make sure I'm in the right place, Materials, Textures, select the image that we're going to add to our material library, click Open. It puts it into here. I'm not worried about what it looks like, okay? This is just an example. And we're going to do a save. And we've saved that material to our material library. And what we'll do is close out the inspector. Then we're simply going to come up here to 5 alpha 1 project, minimize our material editor, and I'm going to go to Windows, Console, and this is all in-game stuff, all right, even the last stuff that we've built before. And I'm going to clear everything so I have a new console session. Close that off, come to the inspector, build the package, and now I don't have any failures. Okay? Remember, this is what the console looks like in the sim when you interact with it, but it's no different than external. It's just graphically different. All right? So I'm not getting that timestamp error inside the sim. So let's close that out. Let's open up that file folder. Notice now we have an AC roofs top.png.flags. All right, that fixed the timestamp error. All right, now let's come back here to our main folder, and let's drag and drop this onto FS Package Tools. Let it do its thing. Anytime. There we go. I'm going to slide this over, and now that timestamp error goes away because we actually added the texture to the library in the sim. Okay, so if you get an asset group error and you see the word timestamp, all you need to do is go into the sim, open up that material library in the material editor, and add in that texture, all right, or any textures that you've copied over to the directory. Now, when is this going to happen? I know if you create a project for the first time just using the XMLs, and you create a material library, and you add in your textures into that textures folder, and then try to build, you'll get this timestamp error because it doesn't know what to do with those textures that are in that folder. So you go into the sim, add those textures to the material library, and rebuild, and that timestamp will go away. Now, sometimes, not always, that's why it was hard for me to recreate this error, is because sometimes it's fine, sometimes it doesn't. But if later on you add new images to that textures directory and do not add them to the material library in the sim, sometimes you'll get that timestamp error again. All right, just go into the sim, make sure that any new textures you've added to the folder are actually added to the material library in the sim. Rebuild, that timestamp will go away. So you'll see that periodically. All right. Now, it was hard for me to recreate this error because I kept taking all the textures out of that folder, getting rid of every reference to those textures, copying them back in, and it would build just fine. So I just had to go until I can destroy my project, basically. All right. So in this video, you've seen 5 different types of error messages in a console for a build. You saw just misspelled names in the XML. You've seen folders that weren't named correctly. And then you saw a texture size type of error. And you've seen a error that was caused by the materials in the material library. In the future, I'll add error messages during the build process for certain model related errors. Okay, so I hope you saw 5 errors that you can see how to take care of right off the bat. And in coming videos, as I come across errors, I will be making videos to show you how to take care of those error reporting. So I hope you learned something from this video and you have error-free scenery creation. I will see you guys on the next video. Have a great day.